Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for my good friend from North Carolina for having us down. Thanks for everyone for being here. We only have 5 minutes to ask questions, so I'm going to have to ask my questions quickly if I get my responses. First, one of the things that we've always been concerned about is, if information's out there, we want to make sure it's getting disseminated. And information's only as good as if it's getting shared with its partners. Mr. Ray, when I read through your testimony, I was a little bit concerned because also what you said in your testimony, but the words you used, open, honest, and transparent dialogue, is that not occurring?
So I think it is occurring within, the current structure that we have. I think it is something that we are always aware of and I think in the back of our minds. And so if there's an opportunity to strengthen or harden what those information sharing protections are, and that as we're working through the complexity of an incident response and recovery, that's something we have very clear and established, and not something we continue to
Let me follow up, because let's talk from the federal side. Do you think you're getting enough information from the federal side to make the decisions you have to make here in North Carolina?
I think we enjoy really critical partnerships with our federal family here in North Carolina. We have a state Homeland Security Advisor work group that meets monthly, and many of our federal agencies are a part of that. And so I do feel like we are supported well from our federal agencies. I think in any response, as you evaluate it, could we do things better? Certainly. And I think broadly, communication and information sharing is always going to be one of those things.
Yeah, let me just follow up real quickly, because another point you made, and you touched on it before, but by forcing states to adopt strict and specific spending targets, the funding is not effective as it can be. And again, the one thing we worry about is the one-size-fits-all coming out of Washington. What you do here in North Carolina might not work what we do in Ohio. And so, we want to make sure that we have good follow-up with you, because as we go forward, that, again, it doesn't work if it's like coming out of Washington, because oddly enough, Washington doesn't know it all. And we need to hear from the people in the states as to make these things work. Mr. Pincetti, if I could turn to you quickly. When I look through your testimony, one of the things that I'm concerned about, especially when you have your report that you issued, the top 10, when you're looking at supply chain exploitation and vulnerabilities and the extreme physical events, man-made and sabotage. Again, these are the things that we're worried about, because again, what happened here, it's not just Mother Nature anymore. And I guess my question is that if we have coordinated attack, let's go back to 9/11. The terrorists came back after trying a truck bomb. And what happens if we would have a massive attack across the country, not just isolated maybe in a state or two? What would that do to the system out there across the country? Because again, we've had testimony in committee on supply chain issues, and the supply chain is that we don't have it. And so what happens if we do have an attack like this? And again, because you're top 2 on supply chain and that exploitation of vulnerabilities, and then your number 7, the extreme physical events, either man-made sabotage and attacks. What happens? What happens to the grid?
Great question. And one of the reasons that physical cybersecurity standard, CIP 14, one of the things it does is it goes after the most, the diamonds, if you will, the most critical stations across the country, and ask each utility to go through a separate, a very precise set of assessments and say, if you have one of these diamonds in your territory, these are the protections you need to put in place. So that's worked very well so far for us. It protects it recognizes one size doesn't fit all, which has been made a couple times, but it makes sure those critical jewels, if you will, of the transmission grid are protected from cascading outages, from uncontrolled separation, and from voltage collapse or instability. So the whole grid collapsing because of that shouldn't happen. But you're going to, just like you have during a major storm, you're going to have a bunch of widespread local outages.
Let me follow up in the last 15 seconds that I have. When we have a major, like we had a wind shear in Ohio several years ago, and so we had power companies from across the country sending trucks up to Ohio to help us from the west side of the state to the east side of the state. But again, that's a state. But what again, my concern is if we have a coordinated massive attack, do we have the supply chain out there to be able to meet it? Because we have a vulnerability out there. We all know, we've had a testimony in committee before on transformers, that there's only a set number there, but all of a sudden, now it's like, okay, we're going to do a triage out there to figure out who needs to get them first.
The industry works together to share equipment, and they have spares and redundancy. But certainly in a widespread attack, and you're going to face challenges. Some of these specialized equipment, like y'all saw today at West End, are long lead time items to replace. And they're specialized and specific usually for the type of substation that they're being plugged into. So that's why supply chain, it's moved to #1 on our list.
Well, thank you.